Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to sit down and chat with amazing humans about their journeys with mental health. For this episode, I'm so happy to introduce Catherine Clinker to the conversation. Welcome, Catherine.
Hello.
Hello. It's very well. That's a nervous laugh, if ever I've heard one.
It was a whore.
Hello, Catherine. Lovely to see you, as always. So just a very quick introduction from me. I'll let you do a proper introduction, let people know who you are. But Catherine and I know each other through mental health first aid training, actually. Catherine was one of the delegates during a training session back in, I think it was around about April of 2019. So this is a couple of years ago. So there's a refresher that's going to be needed at some point as well. But I just remember Catherine from that session, very engaged, very collaborative, supportive in the conversations. Had some great chats over coffee at the coffee station. So yeah, really nice to just reconnect and catch up. And when I was starting the recordings of these podcasts, Catherine did reach out and say, I'm happy to have a chat if you ever want to do one. And here we are. So this is the day, this is the chat. Catherine, I'm going to throw it over to you. Do your introduction. Lovely to see you.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. I've been really excited to do this. So hopefully I won't mess it up for you. But yeah, so my name's Catherine Clinker. Worked in the corporate industry for around 13 years. And yeah, did some mental health training with you, Matt, around April 19. And from there, I've decided that that's become a huge passion of mine. And so within my workplace, I have tried to stamp that mental health stamp, if you've got a stamp of mental health, there you go. Yep. And try and use what I've learned and get that stamped into the business, really. So yeah.
Brilliant and fascinating. I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about some of those stamps at some point as well. So I love that thought. Brilliant. So the purpose of this, of course, is to listen to you tell us a little bit about your story and your journey, and where you are now, of course, is because of the journey in the past you've been through. So let's listen. You tell me. So your journey with mental health, define it as you will. You tell us what you want to share. So I'll pass that over to you.
Okay, cool. This is like 3 hours at least, surely.
Oh,
yeah?
Unbelievable. Yeah, of course. Yeah. We'll have to do 6 parts to it, but we'll do it in 3 hours.
Oh dear. So yeah, so when I grew up, mental health wasn't really talked about. It wasn't really a thing, and I came from a generation of you just get on with it, basically. I was very lucky in that I had a family who I could talk to about anything and it was fine. But the word kind of mental health, it wasn't really spoken about or anything. And I was just, if I was feeling a bit rubbishy, I would just be like, okay, fine, but get up and get on with it, basically. And then having 2 children of my own, I kind of struggled a little bit with anxiety, if you like, especially with my first. Second, again, I struggled a bit with anxiety. And then as I came back to work, I felt the pressures of being a mum and trying to have a career at the same time. So there were those kinds of issues going on. And then I did some mental health training, obviously with you, Matt, and it kind of just opened my eyes to the stuff that's happened to me and also the stuff that will happen, and kind of look at it and go, okay, yes, I was brought up that way, but that doesn't mean I still have to be that way. Okay. And so it's kind of opened up how I feel about things, opened up the conversations with me and my family, and I've accepted that's how they choose to be, and that's absolutely fine. I have no issue with that. However, I choose to be something slightly different. So when I went back to work, work was very, very busy, and I was working with a colleague of mine very late evening, well, 2 o'clock in the morning we were still working. It was snowing. I worked on the weekends. It was exhausting, and we did the job. Next day I was straight back into another project, and I remember a colleague coming up to me and he said, "Oh, are you okay, Catherine?" And I literally just burst into tears and went, right. Do you know what? No, I'm not okay. So I kind of pulled myself together, thought, I'll be fine. And actually thought, do you know what? I can't do this. I cannot do this. So I actually spoke to my manager and said, look, I'm just crumbling. I can't do this anymore. He was very supportive, which was great, told me to go home and just have a few days off. And I did. I literally just went home and thought, right, I just need to sit back, just not think about work, because I can't do this right now. Yeah. And I had a few days to reevaluate things and what have you. Went back to work, and I felt like I had failed. I felt like I kind of broken, basically. And my colleague was feeling very similar, and we've mentioned it to my manager a couple of times, said, look, we broke on this, we can't do this again, it cannot happen again. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, no, this doesn't just happen to me, this happens to other people. So I took it upon myself to build a business case. Never done it before in my life.
Right.
Wrote a plan of what I was going to do. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to call it Let's Talk. It came up with this name, Let's Talk. And I had to take my initiative to the steering board, who were at the time I thought were very scary. These people in a hierarchy up here, and I'm only down here, and here's me with my little, oh, look what I'm bringing you.
Yeah.
And I had to do a presentation. And I said, this came about because things weren't right with me, and I can't be the only one facing that. And there's nowhere in the business where people go, can I just talk to you about this? Or I'm feeling like this, or I'm stuck with this, how do I work this, kind of thing. And so I wanted that forum where people can come, turn up, and even if they're just sat there eating their lunch, but listening to somebody else talking about going through something, taking that time out. So they agreed, which was fab. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I had to present to the wider business. So I presented to, I can't remember how many was in the room. There were some people online and about maybe 40 people in a room.
Okay.
And I started presenting, and all of a sudden I had these tears because I was going back to that place where I broke. And I literally stood there and I was like in tears in front of these people and had to pull myself together and again, no, I can do this.
Yeah.
So I presented it to them, and I had such a round of applause afterwards. I felt amazing. I was like, wow. And afterwards people were like, thank you so much. This is amazing. It's so nice to hear that, we've been struggling as well, and we're not the only ones, and it's just kicked off. So from from that, there's been I run monthly Let's Talk sessions where it's an informal session over lunchtime.
Yep.
People can come and talk about anything, really. Normally it is work related, and that's purely because it's to share ideas. You come as an individual, you don't come with a label. So you're not a project manager, you're not a director, you just come as you, and that's really important. And also it's a safe space, so whatever's said is said in that room, and there's no judgment. I don't want that. And it's, if we can find ways of collaborating together to solve an issue, that because 9 times out of 10, whatever you're feeling, somebody else is feeling exactly the same. And so it's that kind of thing. And there's also a Teams channel which I post stuff on, and everyone else posts stuff on, and so that's kind of where my work sits at the moment. So that's kind of like my little journey, if you like, and where I am at the moment.
Well, I find it fascinating, and I often hear this, especially with the training and the sort of the awareness raising around those initiatives and activities. And what I find fascinating in the journey and the story that you've just outlined there, Catherine, is that sort of when you grew up, you didn't notice it. And I can say, and I'm sure we represent the millions of people out there, the masses more than the minors, but it really is that we didn't recognize it until we maybe stopped and learned a bit more about it and understood it a little bit better, and then having that self-awareness. And I think that's such a fascinating perspective that you've shared there, that sort of awareness of change that happened, maybe reflecting back. I'd like to go back and just touch on a couple of points, if that's okay with you as well, because you mentioned about having children, and obviously a big part of anybody's life as we transition into adulthood is starting families and things. That anxiety when you had your children, what sort of anxieties were you feeling at those points?
It was a control thing. So with my first, when I took her out, I felt out of control because I thought if she cried, I failed as a mum. She's crying because I haven't done something.
Oh, okay.
And so I would worry about being out, and if she's crying, have I got everything? Have I, and in between breastfeeding and bottle feeding, am I doing the right thing? And so my safe place was at home, where I had everything, and if she cried, no one would see, and so I didn't feel like I was a failure. And that carried on for quite a while, and a little bit with my second one, not as much anxiety. However, I was more down.
Okay.
With my second one, because they do well, they used to, I don't know whether they still do now, they do little tests, and you get a score at the end of it, and whether you're on the verge of kind of if you like, but so they just kept an eye on me. But yeah, that was
Right.
it wasn't as bad as anxiety with the second one. So
it's interesting because obviously a lot of people out there listening to these, they'll have children themselves, and they'll be probably feeling some of those very similar experiences as well. I'm just going to pause here for a second because I think your bandwidth or your Wi-Fi is a little bit slow. I'm not sure if you're actually still there. You are nodding your head. So for anybody that is listening, any apologies if there is any slowness to the recording. Is one of the unfortunate things about doing this live and taking everything that we record. So the glitches and the aliens are in the system. You're back. Can you hear me okay, Catherine?
oh, good.
You're
I
good.
can, yeah. Sorry.
Oh no! This is the world that we live in right now, right? It'd be lovely to be sat in the same room recording this together, but unfortunately, this is just what we have to sort of put up with. So apologies to anybody that is listening if you are hearing any sort of distortion to the sound and the quality. It's not our fault. We blame the Wi-Fi. the aliens and the glitches of the Wi-Fi. But no, as I was saying, I think it is really useful that you can reflect on those points as well and recognize those anxieties. What about sort of support around you? Did you have people that noticed anything, or was it just sort of you just get on with it? You're the mum, you know what you're doing. How was that?
I just got on with it, to be honest with you, because I think at the time I didn't, like you say, I didn't recognize it, so I didn't see there was an issue.
Sure.
My husband was like, "Don't worry about it, it's fine," but at the time I just probably didn't realize how bad it was. And then when I look back and go, wow, actually, okay, yeah, that wasn't quite right there. But and it's something that I still struggle with now. If something is not within my control, I don't like that, and I struggle with that. But you learn to deal with these things, you learn how to cope with that, and you learn to accept it. And I think that's sometimes part of the struggle is being able to accept that something that you do or you can't do. And it's sometimes I think if somebody says to you, "Oh, you're rubbish at that," but if you go, actually, do you know what? No, I'm not very good at that, or I can't do that, and I accept that. Do you know what? That doesn't hurt me. That's okay. So you shouldn't see it as a weakness. I don't like the word weakness.
No.
It's just something that you can't do as good as you would like to do. You're not perfect, and the sooner you accept that, the easier it is to move on from things.
It's so true, and we set such high expectations of ourselves we have to be perfect. And there was a recent study that proved sort of the key to happiness. I don't know if you saw it, but I think I talk about it quite a lot at the moment, is lowering your expectations. That's the formula to happiness, is to lower your expectations and not to always try to overachieve everything. And it can be really destructive if we just constantly on this pathway that says I have to be the best at everything. And some people will argue to say, well, that's normal, you should be the best at everything, but reality is it's hard to achieve that, and you then feel that anxiety because I feel a failure, I'm not capable. And it's really fascinating stuff. So let's go into this workplace element then. So obviously some experiences as you're transitioning through sort of your adulthood outside of work, which is brilliant because we have a life outside of work, then coming into work, and then those expectations. And I want to just dive into that thought around the moment that you sort of broke, right? You said the word broke. I hope you did. I'm sure you did. Well, I'll play it back.
I did break, yeah.
Talk to me about what that felt, the feelings you were experiencing at that point. What was going on?
Gosh, it was almost, what was probably worse was trying to hide it.
Right. Okay.
The sheer pressure, and like I said before, coming back from being a mum, I felt I had to prove myself.
Right.
Like I had to start from the bottom up again. And so I'm not shoddy at my job, I'm all right, I do a good job, I'm okay. But I just had this urge to have to do more, have to do better, have to to hit that deadline, and again to get on to the next one, because people are relying on you. And so I just felt that if I don't do this, that's not going to happen. I've let that person down. What are they going to think of me? That was it. It's what are they going to think of me? If, because like I say, I put myself on this pedestal. And so you then set yourself that bar. So to come down from that, that's a very difficult thing to do and to accept. And I couldn't do that. And so it just got to the point where I felt this pressure, and literally just when that person asked me at that moment in time, are you okay? Do you know what? No, I'm not. And literally this just emotion came out, and I was like, whoa. And I found it harder to say I'm struggling, because actually when I got home and I was like, oh, I actually feel okay, I'm not too bad.
Right.
But it was that moment of having to say I am struggling, and then I was like, well, God, what are they going to think? Are they going to give me my P45 now? Am I done? That's it, I don't have a job anymore, well, they're not going to think I'm good enough. That's it, I'm not good enough. And I think that's where this whole thing has come from, is it's not about not being good enough, far from it.
It's fascinating. I think it's, the first thing, of course, is it's the sort of brave element of opening up and saying it. And that's probably why you did feel when you went home, it's sort of like the pressure's been taken off of it, hasn't it? You can,
oh God,
and do you find that through the conversations that you've started now? You've obviously lit a fire into this conversation internally within the workspace, but do you find that with people where they feel a bit more relieved to have safety and the space to do that? As you froze. Oh, I lost you there for a second.
Absolutely. And I think it's the thing. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right. No, you carry on.
The thing is, with this, it's something like this, especially within such a corporate culture, is you can't expect change too quickly. And so it takes a while for people to feel safe, and it takes a while for people to go, okay, so you've said that and I feel that. It's okay for me to say that now. And I think it's a slow process, but actually, when a few people do it, they go, okay, yeah, this is okay. And so it's a slow process, but people are more willing to open up now, and people are more willing to set personal objectives, if you like, or especially with COVID, for example, this whole thing has kind of made people reevaluate, actually, I'm not going to do 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. I'm not going to do that. And, I've been very, I log on, do a good job. If the sun's now out, I'll go out for a walk. As long as I do my job, that's all they can ask from me. That's fine. And so people have then gone, actually, do you know what? That's right. I'm going to take that break. I'm actually going to have a lunch break. I'm actually going to go out for a walk, and I'm going to go out for a walk at 10 o'clock in the morning because I can, and it's encouraging people to look at themselves and go, actually, no, I need to reevaluate a few things, and that's okay to do that. You shouldn't have to keep justifying everything you do all the time. And it's, that's kind of my take on it, if you like. It's just the experience I've had. People are just a bit more willing to look after themselves.
Brilliant. And that's to be encouraged, of course. We want to keep encouraging people to take better care of themselves. I preach that all the time now. It's sort of your self-care is so important, especially through this last year and a bit. Let's talk about that, if that's okay. For you, from a perspective as obviously as a parent looking after 2 children, and also as a worker who has a role within the community of the workspace, especially around the mental health side. How has it been for you? How's things been over the last year or so?
It's been tough, in all honesty. I'm not going to lie.
No.
There have been times when, either me, my daughter, or my son's been in tears, because with homeschooling, my husband so I was lucky enough to be furloughed, which meant I didn't have to work. I could focus on homeschooling the children. So I'm extremely grateful for that. However, that doesn't mean that my time was any more easy than anybody else's. In fact, I'm not a teacher, I'm a mum. And so actually then having to turn teacher and try and teach my children, stuff that, to be fair, I didn't have a clue what I was teaching.
Right. That's worrying, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. I was like, oh, even I've learned something here.
There you go. Every day's a school day, quite literally.
Exactly.
Right?
So and it got to the point where, again, you put so much pressure on yourself to be the perfect mum, to be the perfect teacher, to be the perfect wife, and make sure everything is still ticking along as it should, and something breaks. Inevitably it will. And I got to the point where I was like, actually, no, we can't do this. This is a rubbish time as it is for the kids, I can't make it even more rubbish for them by putting all this pressure on all of us. So, you know, I kind of eased off the gas a little bit and kind of just did the basics. And then since we did that, it was like, oh, actually, yeah, this is okay. This is okay to kind of just relax a bit, step back and go, do you know what, if that doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, you know? So yeah, it was tough at the beginning. However, I started up yoga, which I never thought in a million years I would ever do.
Yep.
And I thought yoga, oh God, no, I can't do that. And actually I started doing half an hour every single day, and the benefits were unbelievable. It was because I honestly thought, well, all you're doing is bending, you know, how can that be any good for you?
Right.
But actually it was amazing. Like just your posture and how you hold yourself and how you feel and things like that. It just, for me, it was amazing. And that was really, really good. So I started kind of doing that on a daily basis. I've got a gym at home, lucky enough to have a gym, so kind of getting there as and when. However, you know, when you kind of go, oh, I'm really good, and then oh no, I've just dipped off, and it's hard to go and get back into it. So I do need to get back into it. But yeah, it's important that, you know, I have that time out. I take the dog out as well, so I get outside. You know, I live in the countryside. I go for plenty of walks. So yeah.
Brilliant. And what about, so you talked about furlough. So when did you come back from furlough? When did that change?
So I was on furlough from, I think it was March, so in the first lockdown, all the way through, and I came back in September.
Okay.
So it was quite a long furlough, but I do work kind of part-time, term time anyway, so it wasn't like it was 5 days a week, you know, that kind of thing. So but it was a long time being out of work. And to be honest, I was gagging to get back to work for some routine, some sort of, you know, me, if you like, you know, because I'm a mum, I'm a wife, but where am I as an individual? And so, you know, people moan about work or don't like their job or whatever. However, work is important to me because that's who I am and that's what I do and that's what I'm good at. So, yeah.
Okay, no, it's interesting. And how was the winter lockdown for you then? Because obviously that was another change of dynamic again, right?
Yeah, it was. I would say that was more tough purely because you couldn't get outside more. The weather was rubbish, and that generally has an effect on people anyway. You know, the kids were constantly indoors. You know, I couldn't shove them outside or anything. And homeschooling again, even though they were on devices and doing a little bit more online teaching. My daughter is absolutely fine because she's 11, but my son, who's 6, you know, he needed me there constantly, and I wasn't on furlough at that time either, so I still had to balance my work and homeschooling. So I found that a lot more tough. However, my manager at the time was absolutely brilliant, and we worked it around me basically. So yeah, that was good.
Nice and flexible for you then.
Very.
So sort of moving into this sort of latest part then, so obviously things are changing slightly, people are starting to go back to workspaces, and you know, how's that transition been for you and for the company and for your colleagues?
So I think a lot of people are still working at home. The offices are open to people who are struggling at home, so you know, you don't have to stay home if you feel that you're struggling, basically, which is a really good point to make, actually, because you know, it's important that yes, if you've got meetings that you have to be in, but also for your wellness, if you go, actually I can't cope at being at home anymore, the offices are open for you, which is a really nice thing. And I probably, even when the offices do fully open now, I don't know if I would probably go in there as much as I would, because actually I've got quite comfortable working at home now. I've got my own little space, I've got my own little routine, and so, you know, obviously if I did have to for meetings I would, but you know, at the moment I feel quite comfortable, and the company's very supportive as to who wants to do what, really.
And if you, so here's a probing question. I don't know if it's going to work, or if you had to go back to that point where you were working in the office versus where you are now, can you recognize different mental impacts to those two different things? Are you quite clear in those?
I would like to think I am, for sure. Because again, having your own experiences, you're able to pick up on little things that people might say, their behavior, that kind of thing. And so you're kind of more open to that. And I guess the conversations now are a lot more about how are you, as in how are you really,
Okay.
not how you're doing with work, because even when I was in the office, as much as, obviously I did work in the office, but a lot of it was going around and having a chat to somebody and, be there at the tea station for 20 minutes having a chat with somebody.
Right.
It's those things that some people miss. And I suppose it's those things, those times then when you start to notice if somebody's not being themselves and that kind of thing. But at the same time, I still have regular catch-ups with people who I know have been struggling with work. And I book in regular catch-ups with them and make sure that, they're doing okay. And even if we don't have really anything to say, it's literally just asking that question, are you doing okay? So I think people are a lot more open to it.
Brilliant.
People are recognizing it a lot more, but I think there's still a lot more work in terms of, if we've recognized it, what do we do? How do we deal with this? So
it's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that as well. Really useful. Got a few more minutes in this session, not too many, but we got a few more, and hopefully the Wi-Fi is going to hold okay. So I will let you sort of say your final pieces around sort of any wisdom words or things that you want to share. In terms of sort of what's missing, I think that's sort of a big point to sort of what's next. What more can you do? What do you think is the additional stuff that can be done? Is there anything else that you could do?
I think there's always more you can do. I don't think with mental health you get to a point where, right, I've done that, that's it, no more now. It's a constant thing. And I think you'll drop the ball if you go, I've done my bit. It's a constant, you're constantly learning, you're constantly being open to things that you haven't been open to before. And to conversations that actually you won't. So I'll give an example. So I know we've got a few minutes left. Somebody came to me, and it was actually a friend of mine who I'd known for a long, long time. And she'd actually basically told me that she attempted to take her own life. I wasn't prepared for that. I've done the training and I've spoken to people about all sorts of things, but I wasn't prepared for that. And as a mental health first aider, I need support in dealing with that as well. And so it's looking at, okay, you've got mental health first aiders and champions, that's great, but we need a support network ourselves as well. So the next bit is looking at what can we do to support mental health first aiders and champions, and also to actually ingrain it in the company as well. For health and safety, physical health and safety, there's policies, there's this. For mental health, it should be the same. There should be policy, there should be this, there should be all this kind of stuff that comes with it, and it should be reviewed on a regular basis because it's always changing, you're always learning. So the kind of next step is to really ingrain it and make sure that it's always in the forefront of people's minds.
Brilliant. And I think and you're so right, because it's not a learn it and then it's done. It's a learn it and continue learning, because it does evolve, and our awareness changes. And I say that in all of the things I do now is, when I started training mental health first aid back in 2018, I've learned so much since then that I've evolved the way I train, and that's what I should do. I shouldn't just accept it and just read verbatim a slide to people and not really give it that context, and it is so important. So brilliant. Keep learning. That's really important, of course, and I know you will, and I know that's your passion is to to keep learning, to keep evolving yourself, and keep doing that. So this is the end pretty much. I'm going to throw it back to you just for a final thought, but Catherine, I knew it was going to be amazing to listen to you talking about what you've been going through and what you've been helping with and everything else in between. So just a huge thank you from me. But any final thoughts, words of wisdom from you?
Oh, gosh, I'm feeling the pressure now. I should have come up with something, shouldn't I? Just like I say, again, it's a keep learning thing. Don't ever think that you've done your bit and that you've stopped. And again, accept things. The sooner you learn to accept things, whether they're good or bad, the easier it is to move on, and you can move on in a much better way. So that's kind of how I'd leave it, really.
Brilliant. Well, it's great, and accept things and just learn to recognize some of those signs. Really useful. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. as I always say in these sessions or in these recordings, for anybody that is listening, if you are struggling or you do need extra help and support, please do know you are not alone. You really aren't. There are people out there who will listen, who are more than happy to help and support. I'm sure, Catherine, you wouldn't mind if anybody wanted to get in touch with you. I hope that would be
Not at all.
okay
Not
as
at
well.
all.
So if anybody does want to talk about kids or workplaces or let's talk or whatever it might be, please do feel free to reach out. You can contact me, of course, as well. But also there are organisations out there to support conversations if you need that safe space to have that chat about things that might not be going so well for you. Samaritans exist today to support those conversations. You can call them anytime, 116123. And if you're not into your calling and you prefer to do a bit of messaging or texting, you can text to shout 85258. Please do always know there is somebody out there that's there to listen, to support you. Catherine, it's been amazing. Thank you so much. Keep on being an amazing human, and I wish you all the very best for the future.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Take care. Bye.